Begin by offering our obeisances to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Vicharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskatyade Siddharane. Right now, I am in Warsaw, and the Warsaw Temple is right under a place where the airplanes fly over all the time. So if you hear airplanes flying over, you're not hallucinating. There are actually airplanes flying overhead all the time here. Is this better with this?
No difference here.
Kumari, is it better?
Yeah, it's better, Guru Maharaj. Thank you.
Okay. Ashwadadana Purusha Dharmasyasya Parantapa Aprapyamam Nivartante Mrityu Samsara Vartmani. Those who are not faithful in this devotional service cannot obtain me, O conqueror of enemies. Therefore, they return to the path of birth and death in this material world. Can anyone hear the airplanes? No? Oh, that's
No,
good.
Guru Maharaj.
Okay. I guess they're a little farther there. I guess they're not very near my microphone. If they get near, you'll hear them. Purport. The faithless cannot accomplish this process of devotional service. That is the purport of this verse. Faith is created by association with devotees. Unfortunate people, even after hearing all the evidence of Vedic literature from great personalities, still have no faith in God. They're hesitant and cannot stay fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. This faith is faith is the most important factor for progress in Krishna consciousness. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that faith is the complete conviction that simply by serving the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, one can achieve all perfection. That is called real faith. As stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 4:31-14, Ita turamula nishechanena tripyanti tatskanda bujo prashaka prahanarachayatendriyanam tataiva sarvaranam atuteja. By giving water to the root of a tree, one satisfies its branches, twigs, and leaves. And by supplying food to the stomach, one satisfies all the senses of the body. Similarly, by engaging in the transcendental service of the Supreme Lord, one automatically satisfies all the demigods and all other living entities. Therefore, after reading Bhagavad Gita, one should promptly come to the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita. One should give up all other engagements and adopt the service of the Supreme Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead. If one is convinced of this philosophy of life, that is faith. Now, the development of that faith is the process of Krishna consciousness. There are three divisions of Krishna conscious men. And the third class are those who have no faith. Even if they are officially engaged in devotional service, they cannot achieve the highest perfectional stage. Most of them most probably will slip after some time. They may be engaged, but because they haven't complete conviction and faith, it is very difficult for them to continue in Krishna consciousness. We have practical experience in discharging our missionary activity that some people come and apply themselves to Krishna consciousness with some hidden motive. And as soon as they're economically a little well situated, they give up this process and take to the old ways again. It is only by faith that one can advance in Krishna consciousness. As far as the development of faith is concerned, one who is well versed in the literatures of devotional service has attained the stage of firm faith is called a first-class person in Krishna consciousness. And in the second class are those who are not very advanced in understanding devotional service, but who automatically have firm faith that Krishna bhakti, or service to Krishna, is the best cause, and so in good faith have taken it up. There is a period to the third class who have neither perfect knowledge of the scriptures nor good faith, but by association and simplicity are trying to follow. The third class person in Krishna consciousness may fall down, but when one is in the second class, he does not fall down. And for the first class person in Krishna consciousness, there's no chance of falling down. One who's in first class will surely make progress, achieve the result at the end. As far as the third class person in Krishna consciousness is concerned, although he has faith in the conviction that devotional service to Krishna is very good, he has not yet gained adequate knowledge of Krishna through the scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Sometimes these third-class persons in Krishna consciousness have some tendency towards karma yoga and jnana yoga, and sometimes they are disturbed. But as soon as the infection of karma yoga or jnana yoga is vanquished, they become second-class or first-class persons in Krishna consciousness. Faith in Krishna is also divided into three stages. It's described in Srimad Bhagavatam. First-class attachment, second-class attachment, and third-class attachment are also explained in Srimad Bhagavatam in the 11th canto. Those who have neither faith, even after hearing about Krishna and the excellence of devotional service, who think that is simply eulogy, find the path very difficult, even if they supposedly engage in devotional service. For them, there's very little hope of gaining perfection. Thus, faith is very important in the discharge of devotional service. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Ramane Om Agyanatimanandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksura Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Sri Rupa Goswami has explained to us in the Nectar of Instruction that our progress in devotional service depends upon our loving exchanges with the devotees. As Kapila Deva has said to us in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the third canto, chapter 25, verse 25, Satam prasangam mama virya savido Bhavanti Rikarna Sainam Kata, Tajjoshvat Ashvavartmani, Shararatir Bhaktir Anukramishati. Siddham, that the association of devotees is essential, because after all, we don't really expect Krishna to talk to us directly at this particular point. So we have to hear from Krishna's devotees. And the subject matter of Krishna's devotees, Satam Prasangam, Mamavirya Samvido. When they get together, they talk about Krishna's glories. So Krishna's glories include Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. The fact that we're expansions of Krishna, although we're Anu, we're minute, still we're part of Krishna's glories. And above ourselves is Paramatma. So Paramatma is Krishna's expansion to assist the living entities, the spiritual souls in this world, either to progress out of the material world or to fulfill desires in the material world. And then above everyone and everything is Bhagavan, the source of everything. Aham Savasya Prabhu, Vatak Savam Pravartate, Iti Matva Bhajante Mam, Buddha Bhava Samandvitaha. The Krishna is the source of all the material and the spiritual world. Everything is flowing from him. The wise who know this perfectly engage in his devotional service and worship him with all their hearts. So in our particular process, which is Sri Rupa Goswami has explained in the Nectar of Devotion, is the process of developing faith. But faith is also divided into three different levels: Kanistha adhikari, Madhyama adhikari, and uttama adhikari. Now, from Shraddha to Prem is the development of faith. And we have Ado Shraddha. In the beginning, there is some faith, some liking. Actually, faith is explained as the art of focusing one's attention and giving one's love to Krishna. So in the beginning, one may hear the kirtan or like prasadam, and it's attractive. And therefore, one inquires how to cook chapatis or something like that. When I was hitchhiking in 1970 from Miami, Florida to Houston, Texas, which I think is around 2,000 miles, which is maybe 3,000 something kilometers. On the way, some hippies picked me up. And although I hadn't eaten for a couple of days, they had some bananas. So I took all the bananas they had and I offered them to Krishna. And when they ate the bananas, they were amazed. They said, "Where do these bananas come from? They must certainly be organic." I didn't tell, well, I guess I tried to explain to them it came from Krishna, but I don't know how much of that they understood. But they found the bananas were certainly special. So if someone takes some prasadam and they like it, they may inquire, when is the next Sunday feast? So that's a kind of faith. They have some faith in the prasadam. Or if one hears the holy name, or if one takes some literature and hears that the soul is eternal, but the body is changing, then one may become a little inquisitive. Many devotees came because they received a Bhakti Godhead or some literature, and they read it, and some of them actually, even without knowing that there is such a thing as a temple or devotees, by hearing the literature, by reading Prabhupada's books, they began to chant Hare Krishna. And even follow the four of the principles. And somehow or another, they met a devotee on the street, and then they learned there's a temple somewhere, and they were quite surprised. So in the beginning, there's some faith, but that faith cannot really develop that much without the association of devotees. In other words, everyone has to learn from someone else. Of course, Prabhupada's books are also sufficient, but there are so many things in Prabhupada's books that one may not understand the practical side to Prabhupada's teaching sometimes, and therefore the association of devotees is essential. Then in the association of devotees, we're supposed to learn 5 different things, especially how to chant Hare Krishna, how to worship the deities, how to read Prabhupada's books, how to serve devotees, and how to spiritualize one's heart and one's surroundings. So these are the 5 essential things that the devotees are supposed to talk to each other about. Other things are not as important, but there are things like how not to burn chapatis is also good, I think, to learn. How to not overcook the rice. How many times a day to take a shower. These are also part of knowledge. But the 5 potent processes of devotional service are the most essential parts of devotional service. Then by performing bhajan, especially when we come to the platform of nishnat, of learning how to avoid the 10 offenses when we're chanting, come to the platform of nishta. Generally speaking, our devotional service in the beginning of bhajana kriya is anishnita bhajana kriya, but later on we try to come to the platform of nishta, or steady devotional service. So that's considered to be uttama adhikari by eligibility for devotional service. Nishta, the platform of liberation from material conceptions. And the material conceptions, Krishna makes it clear in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. He simplifies it. He says, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Ishoshiti Nakangshiti Samaksaveshu Bhuteshu Mad Bhaktim Lavate Param. When one comes to the platform of Brahman, when one is situated in knowledge that we're eternal, we may not know who we are, but we know who we're not. We may not know our spiritual identity, but we know we're not this body or the mind. Then one becomes joyful. Probably gives the example if you're in prison for so many years, and then suddenly they open up the prison and you're allowed to leave, how much you feel relieved, how joyful you feel. Similarly, when one becomes out of the material concept of life, that I'm this body, others are their bodies, that I have to do so many things in this world to fulfill my desires. There's so many things that were impediments for fulfilling my desires, so many problems I had that I couldn't solve. This shoshati, hankering, and kangshati, shoshati, this lamentation, and this kangshati, this hankering, they all disappear. And then one can see everyone is a spiritual being. Samam sarveshu bhuteshu tishtantam paramaishvaram vinahitva vinashantam yakpashiti sapashiti. one who can see the super soul and the soul within all bodies, and who knows neither the soul nor the super soul within the destructible body is ever destroyed, he can actually see. So that's the first correction for our material vision, is to see Krishna and the soul within all bodies. That's possible at the stage of Nishta or Brahmabhuta. And Prabhupada mentions here this Brahmabhuta comes from acting in devotional service. But to act in devotional service is not just doing the physical services, even chanting Hare Krishna or reading, but actually accepting what it says and developing a spiritual vision. So, Prabhupada explains some of the qualities that we can look for someone who's actually advanced to the Madhyama Adhikari platform. In other words, what are we trying to achieve by our devotional service? So let me bring up the nectar devotion. This is, oh, we don't need to align. This is nectar devotion, a library. Okay. This is chapter 3, eligibility of the candidate for accepting devotional service. Chapter 3, and this paragraph is the third paragraph. Is Lavangalata Mataji there?
Yes, Maharaj, I caught up. I'm on the third paragraph. I'm good.
Okay, good. This is, oof. Just have to get my computer lined up so I can read it. Well, it doesn't work. Okay, let me just do this. Devotees may be divided into 3 classes. So this, let me remind you again, the reason why I'm going over this is that, as I said, Rupa Goswami said that loving exchanges are the basis of our devotional advancement. But he also said that we have to learn which devotees are on what level so we can properly exchange loving relationships with them. We have to develop a sense of discrimination that comes from developing a spiritual vision given by the scriptures. So these things are worthy to remember. It's probably more important to remember these things than many other things in our lives. Devotees may be divided into 3 classes. The devotee in the first or uppermost class is described as follows. He is very expert in the study of relevant scriptures. So how do we become expert in the study of relevant scriptures? Well, one thing we can do is study them every day. That's why Prabhupada, when he established the movement, he established especially regular reading. Prabhupada didn't come over to the Western world until he actually had some books. Although he principally introduced the chanting of the holy name at first. Why? Because Prabhupada understood that if we read these books without chanting the holy name, we probably won't understand anything that's in them. Because they're spiritual. And when our minds are disturbed by material existence, it's very hard to appreciate anything spiritual. Especially when our minds are disturbed, it's very difficult to read the scripture because they talk about something beyond our experience in general. Even when Krishna tells Arjuna that his body's changing, but he's not changing, even scholars mistake that as being something that it really isn't. They don't imagine that there's a soul which has a spiritual form. They think that, yes, there's a soul within the body that's unborn, but he's impersonal. That the impersonal Brahman has manifested the material world to make it seem like we're persons. But the ultimate goal is to merge back into Brahman, and we all become one in Brahman. That way, when we become one in Brahman, we won't fight with each other anymore. Then finally there'll be peace, because we'll all agree practically on nothing. Anyhow, there won't be anything to agree upon, so there'll be some peace. There won't be anything to fight about. So Brahman is the beginning, but generally speaking, people don't understand what Brahman is. And if they read Bhagavad Gita from not the proper source, they'll just get confused. So Prabhupada introduced the chanting of the holy name because the chanting of the holy name is actually spiritual. It's Krishna and Srimati Radharani. And if one hears it from the right source and tries to reproduce the sound that one has heard, then the result is that one will actually eventually understand. And I'm chanting to Srimati Radharani and Krishna to engage me in devotional service. And then one will understand what Srimad Bhagavatam is, what Bhagavad Gita's aim is, what its purpose is. If one understands what is devotional service to Krishna. Therefore, one who studied Bhagavad Gita very thoroughly, or the scriptures, he comes to the conclusion, as Krishna keeps on saying in the Bhagavad Gita, Yo mam evam asamudo janati purushottama, that anyone who understands me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, without doubting, is said to be the knower of everything. And therefore he engages himself in full devotional service. Yomam evam asamudo janati purushottama sasarvavit bhajante mam sarva bhavena bharata iti guyatama shastram idam yuktva mayanaga etam bhutva buddhimat syat kritas bharata. That this is actually the most confidential part of all Vedic knowledge. How to make money, how to become healthy, how to develop mystic powers, how to merge in Brahman. These are not the purpose of the Vedic scriptures. The ultimate purpose is to understand where Krishna is eternal servants and learn how to serve him with love and devotion. Therefore, even if one doesn't read the books, but somehow or another, by good association, engages in loving service to Krishna, then the result is that Krishna will also enlighten such a devotee. Then he'll become expert at revealed scriptures. But generally speaking, for most of us who have been studying other things other than the Vedic scriptures, who become confused and full of doubts due to so many contradictions that we've been brought up with, our lack of faith in reality, lack of faith in God, lack of faith in our own identities, confused by all the different problems that go on in the material world, all the different controversies. Studying the revealed scriptures, especially Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, will help us to assimilate the knowledge and see things properly with spiritual vision. And when one becomes expert in the Vedic scriptures, he also becomes expert at putting forward arguments based on those scriptures. He can very nicely present conclusions with perfect discretion and can consider the ways of devotional service in a decisive way. He knows what to say and when to say it, to who to say it to. And he's not confused by apparent contradictions in the scriptures. People may wonder, and how could Prabhupada, who claim, or whose devotees claim, that he saw everyone equally, be so critical of so many different people? How can the Bhagavatam, which claims that it's spiritual, be so critical of so many different races, genders, occupations, the demons? We thought it's supposed to be spiritual. We should love everyone. Everyone's going to the same place no matter what they do, according to some people. But the Bhagavatam doesn't say that. He said everyone is good. The Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, everyone's good. But in the material world, in material consciousness, everyone to one degree or another is bad. This is very hard for most people to comprehend. But one who's assimilated the knowledge in the scriptures, who can present them with perfect description, arguments in terms of the scriptures, can also present to different audiences devotional service in a decisive way, with perfect discretion. And as Prabhupada says here, he understands perfectly that the ultimate goal of life is to attain the transcendent loving service of Krishna. Now, in the beginning, whether we're so conscious of it or not, we have many goals of life. One of them, perhaps, is to obtain Krishna, to attain to the transcendent loving service of Krishna. But one who's on the platform of experiencing what Krishna consciousness is, in fact, one who's actually experiencing Krishna consciousness and the love and the happiness and the pleasure that comes from it, he knows that this is actually what the objective in life is, and other objectives are just like shadows that appear to be substantial, but don't actually represent the actual experience that one is looking for. And he knows that Krishna is the only object of worship and love, that Krishna is unlimitedly lovable, he's unlimitedly affectionate, he's unlimitedly everything. And the soul becomes unlimitedly attracted to Krishna, just like iron becomes attracted to a magnet when the iron is not rusty. And he knows that the first class devotee is one who strictly follows the rules and regulations under the training of a bona fide spiritual master and has sincerely obeyed him in accord with the revealed scriptures. So it doesn't happen by accident. It happens by a determined effort on the part of the soul, the fortunate soul, who has gotten the association with a first-class devotee like Srila Prabhupada, either through Prabhupada's books, or through his example, through his deity, or especially through his, also, we could say, especially or also by coming in contact with Prabhupada's representatives. And each one of us are actually Prabhupada's representatives. As much as we understand what his teachings are, as much as we follow them, to that degree, we become manifestations of Prabhupada's mercy. As we become manifestations of our Prabhupada's, our disciples' accessions, and Krishna's mercy ultimately coming through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then to that degree, it's not our activities, we become manifestations or instruments of Krishna's mercy. Imitra matram bhavasavasachin. Krishna didn't ask Arjuna to do anything other than just become my instrument. He didn't expect Arjuna to necessarily win the battle of Kurukshetra. He didn't expect him to remember the whole Bhagavad Gita, although, of course, Arjuna did remember the whole Bhagavad Gita. But what Krishna expected Arjuna to do was to become his instrument in the fight on the Kurukshetra battlefield. So Krishna doesn't expect us to save the whole world. As one devotee once asked Srila Prabhupada, how can I become a great devotee? And Prabhupada's answer was, don't try to become a great devotee, just try to become a devotee. All we do is have to find out what Krishna wants us to do through Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, and then with some clear understanding and determination, do that activity to please Krishna. And that means that our success in life and Krishna consciousness will be guaranteed. So that requires some understanding what the rules and regulations are. And when we hear Krishna and his representatives, because Prabhupada, even when he was present, he didn't expect everyone to call him up every day and find out what Prabhupada wanted them to do. He expected them to follow his representatives, whether it was the temple president, the temple commander, or in other sense, when one is a little bit more advanced, then one will feel oneself to be a servant of all the devotees, appropriately. We see what Krishna's desire is through many devotees. As I mentioned before, when Srila Prabhupada was installing Lord Jagannath, Lord Baladev, and Srimati Subhadra Devi in the temple in Amsterdam in the early 70s, then at that time, the devotees didn't know how to make arrangements for fire sacrifices very well. They set up an altar. They set up some fire sacrifice for Prabhupada. TV cameras came from national TVs and from Holland came. Everything was being fulfilled. Prabhupada sat down to perform the sacrifice. And he asked, where's the pushpana? So the devotees thought pushpa means flower. They thought pushpavana means flowers, so they gave Prabhupada some flowers. Oh, actually, they didn't give him flowers. Pushpana at that time, they thought was rice. They didn't know it meant flowers. So they cooked some rice, and then they gave it to Prabhupada before the fire sacrifice. So Prabhupada, not rice, pushpa. Actually, he asked for pushpa. So they thought Prabhupada meant pushpana, which was a rice preparation. So instead of giving him flowers for the fire sacrifice, they gave him some rice. And then Prabhupada was performing the sacrifice, but the devotees didn't know how to chant the mantras, the ghee wasn't proper, etc. So Prabhupada was getting more and more disturbed. So, and this was all being broadcast on television nationwide in Holland. And when hippie saw that Prabhupada was getting disturbed, so he went up to Prabhupada and said, Shanti, chant Hare Krishna. So Prabhupada sat back, took his beads, and started to chant Hare Krishna. So although it was a hippie directing him, still Prabhupada understood that this is Krishna's will, and therefore he changed his demeanor in front of the TV cameras in Holland. And somehow or another, the deities were installed that day. And if you want to see them, they're in Radhadesh right now. Lord Jagannath, Lord Baladev, Shrimati Subhadra Devi. Another time, one colonel suggested to Prabhupada that instead of printing Bhakti Godheads and distributing them, it would be better for his preaching if he had hardcover books to distribute. So that's when Prabhupada started translating the Srimad Bhagavatam and printing them before he came to the Western world. And then Prabhupada writes, thus being fully trained to preach and become a spiritual master himself, he is considered first class. So here's an instance where Prabhupada is explaining that one doesn't have to be an uttama adhikari by faith. Faith, as Prabhupada will write in the Nectar of Devotion, that uttama adhikari by attachment, as mentioned here in the verse 9.3, begins with bhava or prema. Those are both perfectional stages. Prema is simply a condensed form of bhava, where one's heart becomes illuminated like the sun in ecstasy of love of God. On that platform, one is actually on the, Prabhupada said, one is actually on the uttama adhikari platform, perfect devotion, and one is not at all agitated by any material circumstances. So that's the ideal devotee to become an initiating guru or an instructing guru, because one sees everything as it actually is, not just through the eyes of scripture, but one is actually living in transcendental reality. He doesn't see only bodies, he sees the soul along with the super soul in every body. Samam pashanti sarvatra, samavastidhim ishwaram, nihinasyatmanatmanam tato yati param gatim. One who sees the super soul accompanying all body, the soul in all bodies, and equal everywhere, does not degrade himself by his mind, and thus he approaches the transcendental destination. So that contact with the super soul is essential for us to actually make spiritual advancement consistently. Because it's the super soul who can remind us what's to be done and what's not to be done. And according to the Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. And one of the factors there, as it says, is relationship. The spiritual world is not about necessarily accomplishing anything. There's nothing from the material point of view progressive in the spiritual world. In Goloka Vrindavan, I don't believe they have any skyscrapers, or Srila Prabhupada used to call them skyscrapers. There are some big buildings, in Dwarka especially, but they're not 180 floors high. Nor has Krishna set up an ice cream factory there to sell milk products. No, the gopis, they don't have a churning machine make butter and yogurt. They themselves do it. They have churning rods, they have churning jars and pots, and they themselves eternally are churning butter. There's no electronic products there. The gopis don't think it would be so much better. I'd have so much more time to read the scriptures if I could just get a milk churner and make butter from that. Or they don't think we've made so much butter, we're selling it to in Mathura. Maybe we can all hire some maids and get a vacation once in a while. Every day we get up early, we start churning butter and yogurt, then we have to cook, then we have to take milk to cows. I mean, we got to do this forever. Maybe there's sometime we can get a break, take a vacation, go surfing in the Jamuna or something. No, the gopis are engaged every day in the simple occupation of devotional service. But because it's for Krishna, therefore it's ecstatic. And Krishna doesn't appreciate simply the activity, although every activity there is permeated with love and devotion. And therefore, when Srimati Radharani cooks, Krishna doesn't taste just the food, the particular preparation. He also tastes the prema of the devotee who's cooking it. And that taste of love is what actually nourishes Krishna. For that reason, Srimati Radharani is requested by Mother Jasoda every day to come and cook for Krishna. Although it is said that Srimati Radharani had been benedicted by Durvasa Muni, that anyone who would eat her cooking would remain healthy and strong. Still, her prema is actually what makes Krishna healthy and strong. Simply when Mother Jasoda cooks or Rohini, their parental affection also Krishna can taste. And in this material world also, we should understand that everyone, whatever they're doing, infuses either a certain mode of material nature into their activity, whether it's cooking or dancing or singing, or a transcendental nature into that activity, depending on their consciousness. But here this is our objective, as is mentioned here. We want to come to the platform of liberation so that our activities become actually devotional. Therefore, it's essential here that we study Prabhupada's books so we can get a clear understanding of how to perform devotional service in such a way that we also have spiritual vision while we're performing it. And that spiritual vision should give us the opportunity to recognize the devotion of the devotees, whether it be the highest devotees or the not so high devotees. We have to learn how to appreciate their devotion and see their activities as part of Krishna's pastimes. That way we can become a pure devotee ourselves. When Srimati Radharani comes into association with her gopi friends, she doesn't think that I'm a wonderful gopi, I'm the best of all the gopis. All the gopis should now serve me and appreciate me. No, due to her love for Krishna and for everything in relation to Krishna, she becomes overwhelmed by appreciation for every gopi she comes in contact with. And because her love expands to such an intense way to every gopi, they become completely overwhelmed with love for her. So it's not only that Srimati Radharani loves Krishna personally, but she loves every devotee who's related to Krishna. When Gopakumara entered into Goloka Vrindavan in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, and when he finally met Krishna, after Krishna came after herding the cows, and saw Gopakumara there, and he mentioned to Sudama, when Krishna was returning from herding the cows, and when he saw Gopakumara, he mentioned to Sudama that here's here's Swarup, your relative, the best of the cowherd boys. And then Krishna rushed towards Swarup, had a feelings of separation from him, and embraced him. And Krishna was so much overwhelmed by affection and love for Swarup that Krishna fell unconscious. And his tears of love muddied the ground of Goloka Vrindavan. And when Swarup saw that, he became confused what had happened to Gopal. And therefore he was bewildered. And Mother Jasoda, Rohini, the cowherd men, the cowherd boys, when they saw Krishna unconscious on the ground, they became overwhelmed with distress and confusion and rushed towards him to find out what had happened. And then they saw Swarup at Krishna's lotus feet, lamenting, and they thought maybe Swarup was an agent of Kamsa who had come to bewilder Krishna, bewitch him. And they all started to lament and cry. But Balaram, he came there and he understood what the situation was, and he asked Swarup to come and pick up Krishna's head and called the name of Gopal. So Swarup picked up Krishna, his head, and said, Gopal, Gopal, wake up. And when Gopal heard Swarup's voice, he woke up and then he immediately kissed Swarup on the cheek. And when Mother Jasoda saw that Krishna was affectionate towards Swarup, she at once took Swarup also to be like her son. Because anyone who Krishna was affectionate to, she also became affectionate like a mother to them. So it is not that we only develop a relation with Krishna in the spiritual world, we develop a relationship with everyone out of love and affection. The same quality that we have for Krishna, we have for everyone in the spiritual world. Now, the state of liberation, that love, that appreciation can actually develop without impediment. And before that, we're trying to overcome things like lust, anger, envy, madness, bewilderment, etc., which all interfere with our relationship with others. So when we can understand very nicely what is our relationship with others according to their spiritual position and how to serve them appropriately, then we can actually give people the affection and love that they actually deserve, that they can actually appreciate and properly utilize for their own spiritual advancement. So that's one of the lessons of understanding what is the qualities of someone who is on the liberated platform and can show us the way of acting on it. It can manifest or show us how to act on a liberated platform, how to love Krishna appropriately, how to make friends with Krishna's devotees, how to help the innocent, and how to avoid unnecessary association with those who are not devotees, who are not interested in Krishna consciousness, or at worst, who are actually envious of Krishna and his devotees. Therefore, again, we should understand what is eligibility for devotional service to come to the liberated platform, and beyond that, the different levels of attainment, such as ruchi, sakti, bhava, and prema, and beyond prema. The best devotee, of course, is one who's uttama adhikari by attachment, because he can bring others practically very soon to the platform of attachment. But even one who's not on that platform of liberation by attachment, if they can explain to us what the purport of the scripture is and how we can follow it in such a way as we can make spiritual advancement, they also have to be accepted as a kind of spiritual master who's guiding us towards our normal eternal consciousness of Krishna and our relationship with him and with his devotees too. That's called a Madhyama Adhikari devotee. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Or the Sarthi Das?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, thank you so much for the class. Honestly, for me, was too much information for my chicken brain. But I just want to clarify for myself. One class of uttama adhikari is by attachment, and the other kind of uttama adhikari is by what?
Eligibility.
Eligibility. Okay.
Unless we're liberated from our material conceptions of life, we're at least as much devoted to our body and our minds as we are to Krishna. Therefore, when it's time to read, we may have an equal propensity to pick up a newspaper as it is to pick up the Bhagavatam. But when we're liberated, then we don't have so much inclination to pick up the newspaper. Our inclination is just to hear about Krishna. Radharani Devi Dasi.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. As you were explaining how Uttamadhikari behaves towards others by recognizing the original Svarup and the relationship with Krishna, I was thinking of how to apply it properly while myself is not, while devotee has not achieved yet full realization and still has got enough of material contamination to be mindful of it. Like, for example, I have come back now to back to my parents' place, and I am realizing how when I joined Hare Krishna movement, I was thinking, yes, enough of this karma association, and I cut ties, but that created a lot of difficulties which were disturbing my mind. So I was around devotees, I was around the temple, but I did not appreciate that I have got material body and it has to be properly sheltered. So in the beginning, many devotees hearing the philosophy, they try to aspire to that level of, preacher and above material body. And like some stories how they would eat halava and puri and khichdi for breakfast, and then later on realize, okay, I do have material body, and at 50 years old, having better diet. So how to navigate this properly and, with understanding of my material concept. So how Lord Chaitanya advised Brahmana Kurmas, so you don't have to go anywhere, you don't have to leave your family, just stay wherever you are. So for us devotees, I guess, what's the question? Why do we tend to apply it in a wrong way? Why do we tend to neglect our material level, our real level, I guess, of advancement.
Well, for one thing, we're an illusion. When you're an illusion, you tend to act in illusion. Therefore, the most intelligent person can learn by hearing, because when they hear, they can see reality by hearing. The less intelligent person learns by seeing, or by experience, I'm sorry. That is, they can hear in such a way as they can remember what they heard. And then when they're working, when they're doing something, they can see the result of acting one way or the other. Because they remember, if I do this, then I'll get this result. If I do that, then I get this result. So they know which the different results will be. And therefore, when they act, they can understand that I should act like this, because this is the result I'll get. And I shouldn't act like that because I'll get this result. But those who are less intelligent than that, they hear, but they don't understand. They experience, but they haven't heard sufficiently to remember, even theoretically, what the possible results will be. And therefore, they don't learn even by experience. So we have to come at least to the platform of learning by experience, which means we have to have sufficient knowledge of what will happen if we do things right or if we do them wrong, so we can recognize the difference between doing something right and doing something wrong.
Yes, understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Niguna.
Yes. I wonder when Krishna dances with the gopis in the night, they leave their husbands, and these husbands of them are also probably devotees of Krishna. I just wonder what's the benefit for them. I mean, it's from material point of view, it sounds very humiliating experience. Your wife is gone to dance with someone else. Of course, it's Krishna, but still, what's their benefit? How do they feel? I mean,
Well, if the gopis snore, then the coward man can get a good night's sleep. So, as Prabhupada writes in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the gopis did not go to dance with Krishna in their material bodies; they went in their spiritual bodies. And material bodies are still sleeping next to their husbands. This is in Gokula Vrindavan. In Goloka Vrindavan, I'm not really even sure if they really have any husbands there. They just think they have husbands. But here, the cowherd ladies, the gopis, they didn't go to meet Krishna in the rasa dance in the material bodies. Their material bodies were still with their husbands. They went in their spiritual body. Therefore, we should read 10th canto after, well, we can read 10th canto, but we'll understand it more clearly after we're liberated from our material conception. Anything else?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you very much. Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai.
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 Jai. Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Hare
Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
His Holiness
Holy
Prahladananda Swami Maharaj. Ki Jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Jai. Hare